that appear to be holding large pieces of this cactus. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's right. So some of the original archaeologists that looked at it, there's this, I guess you could call it a meme, an idea passed through culture of the staff god, this god that holds these columnar staff-like things. And archaeologists, theorized that this was a staff, a stick. But of course, other people have theorized that this is not a staff or a stick, it's San Pedro. And at Chavin de Huantar, we have a pretty clear image of this one carving. It's called El Chaman. If you Google it, just El Chaman Chavin, you'll find it. And it very much looks like a San Pedro. And we know that the people there were using San Pedro, so most likely it was a depiction of San Pedro. The earliest origins of San Pedro, and even more generally speaking of psychoactive plant use, this is super interesting thing. I love this. There's this site called the La Cueva de El Guitarrero. I think it's the cave of the guitarist or the guitar maker. And it's about 11 or 12,000 years old, the earliest archaeological evidence from this cave. Well, they found in this cave, also interesting to note, this, as far as I'm aware, if anyone else can find an older reference, an older site, please let me know. This is the oldest evidence of psychoactive plant use anywhere in the world, period. I have never in all my research found one that's older. So again, if anyone knows about one, please send me a message on Facebook and let me know. They found in this cave, up to 12,000 years old, dried San Pedro in association with ritual items. So, and yeah, the San Pedro was actually in this because it's a very dry place. The San Pedro was actually sitting in this cave for almost 12,000 years, along with things like drums or flutes. I'm not exactly sure what sort of ceremonial items they found, but the point is they found this super, super old San Pedro Huachuma, and we have pretty clear evidence that they were using it as an entheogenic, a psychoactive drug in the ancient past.
So this cave was literally the classroom 101 for psychoactive drugs.
Yeah. And what's amazing is we don't know how long before that they were using it. We may one day find something even older than that. As archaeologists keep studying the Americas, they keep pushing back the date of how long people have been here. I would guess it's 30 or 40,000 years. That's just
Mm-hmm.
But most traditional archaeologists would say between 15,000 and 25,000 years. So who knows how long they were using San Pedro and other psychoactive plants, perhaps psychoactive plants that have even gone extinct or that we have lost the knowledge completely of. So that's something I find very interesting, is that the earliest origins of the usage of these psychoactive and entheogenic plants tied in with the earliest civilizations, the earliest organization of human society. And I think they certainly played a role together. You have to be careful of what some people call the entheogenic reductionist theory, where it is everything was because of psychoactive plants. I don't think that, but I do think they played an integral role in early human civilization and early religion, especially.
Me too. I'm a big fan of the stoned ape theory. I'm sure you're familiar with that as well. Our listeners can look that up. It's quite interesting, but it's basically talking about when our world was going through climate change and things like that. And so these hominoids that were living in the trees had to come down onto the land and kind of explore and search out new foods. And one of the theories is that one of these foods that they were experimenting with were mushrooms that were growing on cow dung, which is why we get Choctaw, which is one of the world's oldest religions, and that's a worship of cows, which is where Hinduism actually comes from. It's fascinating to me.
It is, yeah. That's Terence McKenna's stoned ape theory, and you can find, if you want to read a whole book about it, it's the book Food of the Gods by Terence McKenna.
Awesome, Scott. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, brother. Well, let's talk about your personal experiences, if you don't mind.
Sure. Sure.
What would you like to go talk about there in Peru?
Well, let's do that. But real quick, do you want to? I'll do a quick overview of the various psychoactive plants
Please.
of Peru. So we have, as I said before, we have tobacco, which contains nicotine as its principal ingredient or active principle. So tobacco is used in much different ways than it is in our culture. Typically in the Amazon, it is ground up and blown up the nose, as we talked about earlier, rape. But they also make something called chimo or ambule, which is they take tobacco leaves, they put some basic there's this stuff called yipta, which is basically like ancient baking soda.
I'm
It's
a
a
big
very
fan of
basic.
Yipta. Big fan.
Me too. Coca leaf does not work without it.
Yeah.
People chew coca, gringos chew coca, and they're like, it doesn't work. You got to use yipta, and you got to just keep chewing and chewing and
Mm-hmm.
chewing. Anyway, they put tobacco leaves in water. They add some yipta, this basic substance. They boil it down. They strain the tobacco leaves off, and then they keep boiling it until it turns into a tar, into a paste. And you can stick that in your lip, and it is extremely strong in nicotine. So tobacco is a very important plant for for all of the New World natives, basically, almost. San Pedro, we talked about a little bit. Ayahuasca, we touched on briefly. Ayahuasca is two plants. One contains an MAOI, a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. The other one contains DMT. When you
Scott,
combine
let's talk
these,
about this real quick. I'm
yeah,
sorry to interrupt you. I'm
no, go ahead.
really fascinated with how these ancient people knew, out of all the plants in the Amazon, that the combination of those two plants together and that amount of dosage was going to get you to another level of reality.
Right. So the Machinga people that I work with, they actually did not use the DMT containing component until I believe sometime in the first half of the 20th century. So they actually only used the ayahuasca vine. There was some Machingas in another region that did use chacruna, the DMT component, but the Machingas near Manu, where I work, we're just using the ayahuasca vine combined with this little flower. The flower does not contain DMT. And the Machingas from the other region, when they were pushed out by the rubber traders, the rubber rapist,
Yeah.
it was like the Holocaust of the Amazon, the rubber boom. But that's a different story. But anyway, they learned from these other Machinga to add the chacruna to get the DMT. But where did they learn it? Well, I asked a shaman, a Machinga shaman or curandero or seripagari, whichever term you want to use. Seripagari means the one intoxicated by tobacco. That is the Machinga term for shaman or curandero. I asked them, where did you guys get ayahuasca? How did you learn about it? And one answer you get is, we've always known. It's like, okay. Another answer is that tobacco told them, or that another plant spirit like Brugmansia told them. And a third answer, which I think is really interesting, is that they were told by the jaguar. Now, you can find a video on YouTube, actually, if you just type in like jaguar using ayahuasca. There's a video of the jaguar actually chewing up the ayahuasca vine, eating the leaves. And the jaguar probably uses this to cleanse parasites out of its system, as do the Amazonian people, and probably to use it as a psychoactive as well. You know, there's lots of animals that use psychoactive drugs, including dolphins, reindeer, hedgehogs. Hedgehogs will eat like paint and stuff to get high. They're really weird.
So Sonic was on something, is what you're telling me.
Yeah. Don't leave your paint out near hedgehogs, or like acetone and weird. They're crazy. So probably people have observed the jaguar, who they have great respect and reverence for, using this plant. They decided to use it themselves, just the ayahuasca vine by itself, Banisteriopsis caapi. And for who knows how many hundreds of years or millennia, they simply use the ayahuasca vine, which does have psychoactives in it and will alter your consciousness just alone, just the ayahuasca vine, but not nearly as strong or in as a profound way as ayahuasca combined with chacruna. So I would imagine they use the ayahuasca vine for an extremely long amount of time, all the time experimenting, adding various plants to it. That's something that, you know, that's something that the shaman in the Amazon do. They're always combining different things until eventually one day, perhaps they were told by tobacco, perhaps they were told by Brugmansia, or perhaps when they drank just the ayahuasca vine itself, they got the idea to add this really inconspicuous little plant in the Rubiaceae, the coffee family, Psychotria viridis, chacruna. And then once they did that, it was they saw fireworks, and they told everybody, and it spread throughout the Amazon.
Incredible. Scott, I want to finish up with these the different plants of Peru and then dive into your personal experiences.
Sure.
We got to take a quick break here. So let's take a break and then we'll come right back and talk about that, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, we are back. Scott, let's continue talking about ayahuasca, brother.
Yeah, so I don't remember exactly where we left off, but we were talking about ayahuasca, which is the DMT containing drink of the Amazon. People theorize that it's been used for 10,000 plus years, but whenever people tell you that, we don't know, because everything in the Amazon rots and degrades. It probably was, maybe longer, who knows? But nobody knows. So yeah, ayahuasca is extremely important. Even to this day, there are many, many, many different ethnic groups or tribes, I'm doing air quotes, that use it. And it is also, you know, in modern culture in Brazil, there's these churches, Una de Vegetal and Santo Daime, that some of them are mixed with Christianity, and they wear white robes and take ayahuasca and sing, and it's weird, if you ask me.
Yeah, it sounds pretty crazy.
Yeah, but then there's also the sort of an unbroken tradition with the Shipibos, the Machinga, and other people who have been doing ayahuasca in the same or a very similar way for however long it's been around, whether it's 10,000 years or 3,000 or whatever, we don't know. But one interesting thing, if you ever talk to somebody that says they did ayahuasca with a native group, a tribal group, tell them you did it with the Shipibos, because 99.9% of gringos that have done ayahuasca with the native group did it with the Shipibos. The Shipibos have done a really good job, like, marketing their culture. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it is what it is. But
is this in the area around Tarapoto and that?
Yeah, I think it's Tarapoto Pucallpa, I think is the sort of where you would go to meet the Shipibo. But they actually travel around selling their textiles and sort of selling their shamanic ayahuasca services. But yeah, the Shipibo have they've become the
they're the Amazon company of the Amazon, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they have done a really good job. And, you know, I think it's a great thing in many ways. In some ways it's not, but yeah, that I think gringos, Westerners, whatever, we need ayahuasca to wake us up from destroying the planet and a bunch of other things. And there needs to be somebody there to facilitate that. So it's great.
We're seeing such an influx, especially if you look at PSOC, of these Western shamans, you know, who these new age guys who come in and they start doing their tours and stuff. And so I really would prefer much myself to do it with a group of natives or tribes who had a lot more experience with it, you know?
Yeah, I think, you know, I could go both ways on that. I would rather, and I always generally do it with the natives, but I would rather do it with a gringo that had been doing it for 25 years and was extremely dedicated to it than some Shipibo guy who was like, man, you can make a bunch of money from this, and has been doing it for 2 years.
Yeah, that's true. You should never judge a book by its cover, right?
So